was Tampulu Kaba'a Monastery in Boulder Creek. And there was a man named Bob who was Kapia there at the time, and he wrote back to me. And also I received a letter back from a Zen monastery near Mount Shasta. And the other places, they weren't really Ponjijan. They were like meditation, like Teyayita, or just a place where people would go, but there are no monks there. So I got letters back from two places. There was the Boulder Creek, Tampulu, and also a Zen place called Shasta Abbey. So I went to both places, and the Zen place I didn't like very much. It didn't seem to be very close to what the Buddha taught. They had a store, and they sold statues and incense, and the monks and the nuns are living together, and lots of chanting, and I don't like chanting very much sometimes, but it was many times a day, all the ceremonies, and it was in but then at Boulder Creek there were 3 monks there at the time, and they lived very quietly, and it seemed like it was much closer to what the Buddha originally taught. So I had the idea that I would become a monk at Taungpulu in Boulder Creek. And so first I went and became a Donlaba Koyenji for 5 weeks. This was like 1988 or something like that. And it worked. I liked it. And so I came back, and I got rid of everything, paid off all my debts. And so then I went back and ordained in 1991. And like I said earlier, it's like Western monks, they tend to be more like radicals. They're not following along with everybody else. And from the beginning, Sagadega, I wasn't interested in following what other people were following. I just wanted to know what the Buddha taught, and I wanted to follow that. And so I wasn't interested in American Bodhisattva, and I wasn't interested in Burmese Bodhisattva. I wanted to follow ancient India Bodhisattva, like the first Bodhisattva, Patamawada Laichine. And so I would read the books, and it talks about the monks wandering from place to place. Paya let tet donga, ponji jang myate mishiu, ponji myathu lan shaude. Neyate mishiu. Uzin le edilo nejine. America mamayabu. But that was always the idea in my head. I wanted to live like an ancient Indian monk as much as possible, like the first monks lived. And my father was a strong man, and so I liked the idea of the monks being tough. Hosheshe donga ponji mya thuro ashiyane, dubamaso kanyane. If it's hot, they just take the heat, and if it's cold, they take the cold, and if they don't get food that day, it's okay, no problem. And they just live alone in the forest. And so I like that idea also. Boulder Creek ma. Diya ayasoyin tila samadhi and pinya shide. Those are the 3 steps in Dhamma. Tila, samadhi, pinya. Uzin wa ne donga samadhi thit makambu ne pinya thit makambu damimet tila shinaine. So uzin wa ne donga wini adain alachine. Samadhi makambu ne pinya makambu damimet wini adain ne naine. So I wanted to follow the rules also. At first, I had no idea of following Vini strictly. too. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. Can I do that? It's not gonna work. That's no problem. Kesama Shivu. So, like I said, I didn't want to follow along with what everybody else was doing, and I wanted to follow the rules. I mean, if I'm going to put on the robes, I should follow the rules. And so, when I first became a monk, I didn't know about Winnie. I didn't really, it was not my idea at first to become like a Wunyadara, anything like that. But I thought, well, if I'm going to be a monk, I should follow the rules. And so I learned that there are lots and lots of rules, and so I started studying the rules. Very strict at first. I think maybe even now I have a reputation for being very strict, but I'm not as strict as I used to be. It used to be any kind of rule, I would not break the rule. And so I got into trouble sometimes because it's against the rules to travel with a woman. And some rules almost everybody breaks, but I didn't want to break any rules. So I got into trouble just because I was too strict. And one thing that I learned that is an important thing, I think, and it makes it difficult to teach Dhamma for me, is that you can't really explain the truth by talking about it. It was in Bamazagane, te machwanjin lo, Ingle lo, piorate, davime, Bamazagane, chwanjin down te ya kong kong mahodapu, ba pilule sero, a mienson te ya zagane ma pionaimu, what pinya kore. So paramata tissa ma pionaimu. So it's like, let's say there's somebody from some village, and they've never tasted before. And so they go to you and they ask, what does vanilla taste like? And how do you explain? I mean, you can't explain what vanilla tastes like. It's like even if you speak the same language perfectly, still you can't explain what vanilla tastes like in such a way that they might think that they understand, but still they won't know what it tastes like until they really taste it. And that is what Daya is like. That's sort of a problem that the Buddha had, is that even the Buddha cannot tell you what vanilla tastes like or what Nibbana is, what Paramatthattissa is. He can't tell you with words. The best thing you can do if somebody asks you what vanilla tastes like is you tell them where to find vanilla, and you just tell them how to taste it for themselves. That's the only thing you can do, because until they taste it for themselves, they won't know what vanilla tastes like. No kind of words is going to tell you. And so that's something that I had to learn, is you can't really understand reality by thinking about it or with words. You have to follow the method. It's like Tiya is like a map. It's telling you how to find vanilla and how to taste the vanilla, and then you'll know. And so that's one of the important things I learned from becoming a monk, is that if you want to know Paramatthattissa, you just have to follow Tiya, and you'll learn it through meditation. But you sometimes reading books can help, especially if it's like a map telling you where to find the vanilla. But if you really want to know reality, you have to learn how to stop being addicted to your thinking. Because most people, they're addicted to thinya and piñati, and they think that's reality. But you'll never know Paramatthattissa if you're addicted to thinking and words and this kind of thing. You have to go beyond the thinking and beyond the words. It's thinking, they're symbols. I don't know how to say symbol in Burmese. It's like a nimate. Yeah. that's what thinking is. It's different from the reality. Like, if you think tree or you write TREE on paper, I mean that's very different from a real tree. It's very, very different. And so that's the way thinking is. Your thoughts, they're like words on paper. It's very different from the reality. So that was one of the first really important things I learned about Taya is, I mean, you're never going to learn the truth from reading a book. The best thing that books can do is to kind of unteach you what you think you already knew. You know, it's like, it's important always to be challenged, to hear what you're not used to hearing so that your thinking becomes, you know, you stop depending upon it so much. So if you read books that you know you won't like, that say things you don't believe, it can actually help you even though it's not pleasant, because it's sort of making your thinking less, you know, you depend upon it less. It's challenging your thinking. So that's one advantage of being a Western monk, I think, and being a radical, is it's you don't become too attached to one way of thinking, and that includes even, you know, Taya, or you know, what the book says. It's very helpful so long as you don't have Tanyozin for it. But once you get Tanyozin for anything, even if it's Tanyozin for Taya, then that becomes like an obstacle, or it can become an obstacle, because you can only go so far with it, and you can never make it all the way to Nibbana with thinking or books or what people tell you, you know, what the teacher says. You know, if you rely upon that completely and just say that's the truth, then you'll never make it all the way to the end. Well, getting back to the story, my first 2 wa was at Boulder Creek, but some of you who have a lot of experience there may know that there were problems at Boulder Creek, and the lay people, the Burmese supporters, were sort of in rebellion against the administration in San Francisco, and the monks weren't happy, and there's all kinds of troubles there. So some of the monks, including U Kothanla, told me I should go to Burma for a few years until things got better. And they said it would be a good experience for me because, like I said earlier, it was in I wanted to follow like the ancient Indian way. And in Burma you can still do that. You can still live the way monks lived 2,500 years ago. You know, like in the village, you know, it's they have radios, and nowadays they have cell phones, but still the men, you know, take the oxen out to the fields to plow, and the girl still takes the yeo on her head and walks to the well, and a monk can just live under a tree because the weather's not too cold. And so that's what I did. I went to, the first place was Chaltsindoya, Tongpulu Chaltsindoya, near Meitila. And I started living in caves. That's part of the main theme of my life, is living in caves, because Anya Detha Nyadi Udu Ta Apure, and Uzin a not nangan Lumyo Pitlo Apudan Tik Makanaimu. Dajan Langu Mande Ramyane. Maybe 15 or more years of my life I've lived inside of caves, because inside the cave is cooler. Langu Te Ma Bo Elo, Uzin Edilo Ni Nine. So the first cave I lived in was at Chaltsindoya, which was just a concrete cube about 8 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet. But still, even though it was difficult there, Omanera Toro Chane, Davime Totanda Adain Mahopu, I wasn't wandering from place to place. Still, I knew I was going to sleep there that night, and I knew, you know, where my next meal was coming from. And so I would read books like the Thota Nipata that was talking about, you know, the ancient Indian monks who just wandered, and I would feel ashamed. It was in Shetde. It was in. I wanted to be as strict as possible, and just living in the same monastery all the time, and knowing where my food was coming from. It just, I would feel ashamed because I wasn't living like the ancient Indian monks, like the first monks. So I experimented with trying to be more strict, and just walking around. But I found out that I couldn't just walk around. First of all, it's the weather is so hot I can't walk around in the sun for very long. So only in the winter time in Myanmar I can walk around. But also, I tried it once. I tried to walk from Yangon to Wanduin, and I made it about as far as where's the Chamye Ita at? The Dai Kwe. No, it's the one north of that. There's a Dai Kwe. Mobi. Yeah, I made it a little bit past Mobi, like maybe 35 miles before I got arrested. Ho kit donga what Tatmado kit donga. So yeah, kit donga. Not nangan lumyo. What Eddie lo lan shao lumya. So I got arrested, and they're taking pictures and asking all kinds of ridiculous questions, and then they sent me back to Yangon. But I found out that even if I hadn't been arrested, still it wouldn't have worked, because anytime I would stop, there would be a crowd of people would start. Everybody was wanting to follow me because they don't see Western monks walking around. And so anytime I would stop, a crowd would start to gather. And it was just, it just wasn't working for me. So I learned that if I wanted to just wander around, I would have to do it in the forest and not walk by the side of the road. So I lived in several places in Myanmar. First was Chaltsindoya, Tampulu Chaltsindoya. Then I spent 1 year at Mahagandayon in Amarapura. And spent some other places like Thabay Aindoya and Migadawan in Mimyo. And but I found that if I wanted to live like an ancient Indian monk, like the first monks, I would have to go into the forest. So I was looking for a good forest, and finally I found Alando Kasapa, which is Sabawa Uyen. And still they have tigers there, and elephants and leopards and monkeys. So I experimented with living there. And at first I was just spending the hot season there because it's up in the hills a little bit, and it's Nyali Udu Ninebo Tatane. Then once I tried to spend a year there, spend the rainy season, and it was very difficult because sometimes if it's raining hard, you can't make it to the village. The mud in the water is too deep. You can't get food, and also there's just seven times I got malaria, and also it's a little bit difficult for me because these people are Hopa Unji Ma, Orlando Kasapa, Myat Bet Ma, Yuadu Yuala Mya, the Ayode, Sin Onautik Matondabu. Najan is in Myapin Bedunama Kong Kong Zagama Pyorabu. So also just living alone all the time was difficult for me, not being able to talk, or even if I do talk, their mind is so simple. They're very good people, but the mind is so simple that we can't really communicate very well. Amin Matulo Nene Kete. So finally, it was just too difficult to live there all the time, and the forest was being cut down anyway. So I heard about a good cave at a place called Wanbo Doya. So I went there, and it was a very nice cave. It's a deluxe cave there. It's the Bawa Langum Hopu. It's Lumyat Dude. So it's artificial cave that got dug into the side of a hill, and it goes in about 50 feet, and there's like a walkway and 4 rooms. And I had a screen door built on the front to keep the bats and the rats and the snakes and the people out. And there was one other monk living there. He's old Do Tuet Ponji. He was much older than me, but I had a little bit more wa than him. So he called me Bande and I called him Awutho. And he lived down by the river and I lived up on the hill in the cave. And compared with Alando Katapa, it was pretty luxurious, although it was still pretty rough. And so I lived with him at Wonbo for about 5 years, and then he was very old, so every day I would go and check on him just to make sure he was doing okay and give him my extra food. And one day I went down and he was lying there dying. That jilo nyaka ma kana kudita yane. Vido tanya thu apien twet lo thu gong gong mamin nine lo mui boy to gongo nimbido thu kite kanyane. So he was bitten by a cobra, and then he died that day. And so then I was staying there by myself after that. We cremated him, mithinjo lo yare, not to yet. And after a little while longer, some other monks heard about Wonbo Doya, and so they wanted to come and stay with me. And I stayed there up until just a few years before I came back to America in 2011. But the thing was, Uzin the PB at that bo gene lo a chan a yin lot makanine of like Yadi Udu de Pulo the Kadian Uzin name a kong you are ma through Udu Pia Kore English lo bello codale Matthew diamond at the end of the rainy season, before the weather gets cold, the weather keeps changing. You know, mo yuabi ne pure ne pubi mo yuare. I was in Kandago th makanaimu kana piane. Piama hopu. I don't think it's caused by yoga po. It's just because the weather is changing so much that my body can't adjust. And among the villagers, it's mostly the older people and the children who get sick with this. But because I'm like an outnang and lumyo, it's in Makanaimu. So because of that, I moved to Memyo, and I started wanting to come back to America. Also, it was like I was reaching a level where I wasn't making progress like I used to. So it's like I needed something to change. I wanted to change because it was like I was not making progress as much anymore. So I thought coming back to America would be good for me. And so in 2011, I came back to America, and at first I was trying to stay in Washington State, which was where I lived before I became a monk. And I tried to just live with Western Buddhists. And then I started learning very quickly that it's very difficult to live with Western Buddhists. Because for a number of reasons, Western Buddhists, for one thing, they don't have any idea of like Songkhan or Dana. You know, if they want to give Dana, they might give some money, but they don't offer food. And they don't really have an idea of Pisileba and what monks, monks can't cook their own food. They have to receive food. And the Western Buddhists, they didn't really see much point to that. They just thought it was kind of silly. And I think part of the reason for that is Western people, they think a lot like Protestant Christians, even though maybe most Americans aren't Protestant Christians anymore. Still, they think like Protestant Christians. They don't like priests or monks or this kind of thing. They want to do it themselves. And so Buddhism is very different in the West than in some place like Burma. Like in Burma, to some degree, Buddhism is like a spectator sport, where you've got the professionals who do the best, and then the lay people, most of them maybe don't practice meditation. They're just supporting their favorite team in a way. Whereas in the West, people don't like that way. They don't want to support the monks. They just want to do it themselves. But because they're just doing it as a hobby in their spare time, they don't get very far with it. So, anak nanga ma taya thit mamyin ta bu, lu mya thuro amyin song taya thit mayaw ta bu. Thuro thanga go matok pan chin bu da and ko ha go malo ta bu. Da jang amyin song taya thit mashi bu. Also, I found that the Dhamma teachers, they're territorial. I don't know how to say territorial in Burmese, but when I would come, they would see me as sort of competition. They wouldn't want to help because I would be competition for their job. They want to be the teacher, and so this monk comes, and it's like the Dhamma teachers that I thought maybe would be happy to have a monk in town. It's like they're afraid, because they're afraid that I'm going to take over and become the teacher, and they don't get to be teacher anymore. And for me, it was very strange, because most Dhamma teachers in the West, they don't know very much about Dhamma. Maybe even the Noble Eightfold Path. They wouldn't be able to list the 8 steps on the Noble Eightfold Path, even that much. Like even children in Burmese villages, many of them would know more Dhamma than most Dhamma teachers in the West. And so it just seemed very strange to me that I knew probably 10 times as much Dhamma as the teachers did, but still it's like they didn't want to have anything to do with me, really. Maybe a little bit, just so that they wouldn't look too bad, but I think they were happy when I finally gave up and left. And so it was really surprising for me that I thought a monk could come to the West, and if he knew some Dhamma and knew meditation, that people would be happy. But it's mostly, it's like ashit nangan lumyo ponji myago tau panchine jinyo rate. So that was very surprising for me. And so eventually I just kind of given up, and before long I'll be going back to Burma, and at least there I get some exercise and can live more like the ancient monks did, which is good. And I think that's pretty much the whole story of how I became a monk. And I should say that with regard to Ba Ajo Yadale, Tingan Wupbido Ba Ajo Yadale, another big one is just learning the advantages of mindfulness, of sati. For example, most people, if they feel angry, or they feel worry, or they feel scared, it's I'm angry, I'm worried, I'm scared. But if you learn Thadipatan, then you just see it. That's anger, that's worry, that's fear, that's not me. If there is any you at all, it would have to be the one that's looking and not the thing that you're looking at. So if you can look at something, you know that it isn't you. So you can look at your money, you know that your money isn't you. You can look at your car, you know your car isn't you. You can look at your hand, you know your hand isn't you. Because the hand is the thing that you're looking at, if assuming that there even is a you that's doing any looking. But it turns out you can look at anything. Your thoughts, your feelings, any of that you can look at. So in a way, it just takes the you away. And so that's one of possibly the most valuable thing I've learned from being a monk and just from practicing Dhamma is this whole idea that whatever it isn't you, because if you can see it, if you can look at it, then it's not you, and it separates you from just being stuck in samsara. If it's I'm angry or I'm worried or I'm afraid, then you're stuck. You're in samsara. You're in the matrix. I don't know if you've ever watched that movie, the Matrix, but it's like a good upama for what samsara is like. And so just being able to practice mindfulness, and if you get into the habit where it becomes almost automatic, then if anger happens, then it's just like a flashing light. You can just look at it. Oh, it's not you anymore. So then, it still happens, and it can still be causing kamma, but there's like a detachment. There's like a separation, so that it takes the strength away from it. It takes away most of its power, and that is probably the most valuable thing I've learned as a monk, is just the value of mindfulness and detachment from all these things that we think is us but really aren't us. And anybody who can learn that, it's a treasure. I mean, it can change your whole life for the better. It just it's like the next stage beyond just being an ordinary person. It's extremely valuable thing to learn. So one thing I've found, like if you get angry or if you get frightened, you should look at the anger or the fear at least as much as you're looking at whatever you think it is that's causing it. Just look at the anger. If you feel anger, just look at the anger. Watch that. And it just immediately puts a space between you and the anger, so it's not you anymore. And so that's the story, and I assume some of you would have questions to ask. My very first meditation teachers was my U.S.A was Sayadaw at Boulder Creek, and then also my main teacher was Utezania, who is now Utunyi. So he Lutuet. But those were my first two teachers, and then also books. I read books, and then after going to Myanmar, my main teacher there was Chaltsen Sayadaw. And also I spent 2 months at Pandita Rama and spent some time at Chamyi Ita, and I've met with like Mahamyayin Uzodaka, and you learn a little bit here and a little bit there. My first Winnie teacher was Utezania again, and also I just read all the Winia books. So I read all of Winia in English first, English translation, and then after I learned enough Pali, then I read it in Pali also. So that's the best teacher for Winia, is just read the books, because that's where all the rules are. And then you know exactly what the rule says and what it doesn't say.
Was your father a member of the hypnotism or Edgar Cayce?
Ah, yeah, Edgar Cayce was a long time ago. That was when my father was a boy.
He was one of his. We still have today followers in America.
Yeah. I think if I remember correctly, my father's mother wrote a letter to Edgar Cayce once, because it was
Very similar to it was very similar to his dad.
yeah.
Hypnotize them to find out what your he was like.
Yeah. And then he used it also for medicine and that kind of thing also. So for Edgar Cayce, that was strange, because he was a Christian and he didn't believe in it at first.
We still have his followers in Mexico and Brazil.
Huh?
One of my employees was one.
Huh? Yeah, he also experimented with other things like dreams and ESP, that kind of thing.
So how about your relatives? Are they interested in Dhamma?
My relatives.
Yeah, your brother, your relatives, your brother or sister or
I have one brother, and he's interested, but he's too much of a loose shoat to really practice Dhamma very well. So he likes drinking beer but he spends a lot of time in Thailand. So he's proud of me, but he doesn't want to do it himself.
have you been out there or meditation center?
I've been to Pa'ao a few times.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
And when you went to Thailand, did you meet the founder of the
Oh no, he had already passed away, and also the second one, Usandobhatha, also had passed away. So my teacher there was Indobhatha. So I was there in like 1993 and 94. Uh, the closest thing to like Zan that I've practiced, it was like I discovered it accidentally. Met Adwai Ajahn Yar. I was at Pandita Rama Sri Dangon Yita, and I'd been there for more than a month. And if you enter a Tyasakan, sometimes your mind will just start fighting against meditation, where it won't stay on the object. You put it on the object and the mind goes away. You put it on and the mind goes away. So I was becoming frustrated. So then I thought, well, I'll just make my mind empty, and then whatever comes up, I'll watch that. So I made my mind empty, and then it just stayed empty. So I'm waiting for something to happen, and my mind is just no thinking. And I had never really experienced it before. It lasts this long where you're wide awake but you're not thinking. But when you're wide awake and the thinking stops, most people don't experience that for very long, and I had never experienced it before. And it was just really, it was very extremely interesting, and it felt really good. It was like when you're thinking, your mind is narrow. You're focusing on this one thing. But if you're wide awake and not thinking, then it's like your mind becomes wide open. And so finally I just started getting excited, and then the excitement caused it to go away, and I started thinking again. But that's about the closest I've done to like thamata, like good thamata, like deep, getting like a jo ya on thamata, where it's like meditation with no padana ayon. It's just empty, but you're still wide awake. So it's not like you're unconscious. You're wide awake, but the mind is just clear. There's no thinking, and there's no real attachment. So that's about the closest I've done to, like, I guess you'd call it tamatha. I've practiced other things, the 32 parts of the body, and that sort of thing. But I think most of what is called Zan in Burma is really hypnosis. There's a lot of that. A lot of people in Myanmar, if they think they have Zan, really, they've hypnotized themselves. They've gone into a trance state, and then they experience what they think they ought to experience. Like there's a meditation center not far from Wanbo, where they say, just within your first week of meditating there, they guarantee you can sit for 3 hours, and you can fly up into Nat Pi, and you can go into Ngaye, and you can see all the beings. They guarantee. It's like your money back if you don't get it. But that sounds like hypnosis to me. My father was a hypnotist, so I know what hypnosis is like. And that just sounds like, I don't think they're lying. It's just that they believe, if you're hypnotized, you'll see what you're told you're going to see. It's your imagination. It's seikku, but seikku ne aman makwe charabu. So that's kind of a danger with tamatha, especially. If you practice tamatha, you have to be careful that you're not going into like a trance, like a hypnotic trance. So it's good always don't necessarily believe what you experience, no matter what it is. Even if you think that you've got metpo or something, you shouldn't be too sure, because anybody can be wrong sometimes. So even if you think you know the truth, it's good to keep looking, just in case. Well, hypnosis, usually your mind becomes very narrow, concentrated on one thing, and it can't move away anymore. And if you get into that, it would be called a trance, whether it's hypnosis or not. But it's good always to have a detachment, where it's like I was talking about earlier with the anger and the fear. If you're just stuck in it, then it's not good. It's healthy to have a detachment. So even if your mind is focused just on one thing, it's still good to have that detachment, to have the mindfulness, so that you're not just stuck and just believing whatever is happening. So I think that's important, is always to, in addition to the samadhi, you have to have sthiti also, so that there's a detachment. Because you don't want to be in a state where you're just stuck, where your mind, whether your mind is narrow or wide, if you're concentrated on something and you're just lost in it, with no detachment and no perspective, then that's it can be dangerous, just because it could lead you in the wrong direction. You might think that you're experiencing zan or metpo or something, when you're really not. With regard to like hypnotic trance, I don't know what Abhidhamma would call it. I'm not exactly sure how Abhidhamma or something like the Visuddhi Mat would explain hypnosis. It may be that some of the meditation techniques, like kasina, kathain, is that what it's called in Burmese? That's very similar to hypnosis, where sometimes in hypnosis also you're looking at a circle. So it could be that hypnosis can be good. It could be sama samadhi for all I know, sama samadhi to myo, but at least if you're going to go into a trance state, you should know that it's a trance state. You should be aware of what's happening and not just get lost in it. So again, what Abhidhamma would call it, I'm not exactly sure. That's one difference between Western Buddhists and Eastern ones, is Western Buddhists usually, they have more interest in Vini and the Thotanda than in Abhidhamma and Tathagata. So even the really strict Western monks, most of them, they don't know the Tathagata very well, or Abhidhamma, they don't study it very much. So maybe Gurudhamma could answer that question better. I don't know. But that was one advantage for me, that my father was a hypnotist, that I have experience with that, and then I can hear about different meditation techniques, and sometimes it seems like, or the experiences some people have. Like, I think most of the people that I have met that consider themselves to be Thotapan, I think really they just had a strange experience that they just want to think that they're a Thotapan when really they're not. So you have to be careful, because once you think that you're a Thotapan, it's nobody can tell you anything anymore. So you have to be careful. It's best not to even think about it. whether you're a Sotapan, whether you're an Arya or not. Because if you really are an Arya, you won't be thinking, oh, I'm an Arya. And yeah, well, it doesn't even matter whether you think about it or not, because it's going to be true whether you think about it or not. So it's best just not even to worry about it.
So you didn't get any of the hypnotism from your dad, from your father?
Did I learn it? I know how he did it. I've never tried to hypnotize anybody, and I'm almost immune to hypnosis. People have tried to hypnotize me and they can't do it. So I think that's good for me. That's one reason why I've practiced more Satipatthana than Samatha, because it just works better for me. And being a Westerner, I think too much anyway. So it's a better practice, I think, for Westerners especially, but probably for everybody. Well, I think that's part of it. Like I said before, it was an Amyan at Malaitabu, and I don't like people telling me what to think. So like guided meditation, sometimes at Western meditation centers, or I think Burmese also, there's the guided meditation where everybody is sitting there and then the teacher is, now your mind is like this and now your mind is like that. And always I resist that because I don't like people telling me what to think. Oh no, some people are better hypnotic subjects than others. Some people will go so deep that it's like Sadota Zan, where they almost stop breathing and their heart almost stops beating. They look like a dead person. They can go so deep with hypnotic trance. And then other people, they're just completely immune. They just won't get hypnotized. So I read a book. It was Mahamyan Uzodika's book that I read. It was from Stanford University. They have a hypnosis laboratory there, and they had the types of people that can be hypnotized easily and the types of people that can't be hypnotized easily. Like if you read a book where you're so interested in the book that you don't hear anything outside, you're just completely absorbed in this book, then if you can read a book like that, then chances are probably you can be hypnotized pretty easily. Mm. Well, it was like I said earlier. Part of it was I can have respect for that, whereas I couldn't have respect for just being materialist, and I couldn't really have respect for for just partying and getting in trouble and having fun all the time. So it was something that deep down I just could feel that there's something very deep and true about this. It was like Western culture is very wide but very shallow, and it didn't satisfy me because I've got some kind of parami or depth that it just doesn't fit into Western culture. There's this deepness that it just wouldn't fit. So then when you study Dhamma, it's like there's depth to it. It's I don't know how to explain it better than that, but it was just intuition. Just intuition told me that that is true. It was yeah. So it's hard to explain. I don't think words really can explain it very well, but just intuitively I could just feel that there's something true there that is more true than going off and making money or whatever. Like it's closer to Paramattha or something like that. Nupathana. Like Padana Ayon. Oh, if I have a Padana Ayon, usually it's like Anapana. So it's like the touch of wind at the nostrils. No, it's not Winley Twetle. I don't like Winley Twetle because that's like thinking. You know, it's Winley Twetle is not Paramatta Tissa. But the Vedana, the lay tidet Vedana, that's closer to Paramatta Tissa. So lay tidet Vedana mate. But a win a twet that's that's like Seku to myo. So I don't like a win a twet so much. I just like the lay tidet Vedana because I think Vedana is closer to Paramatta Tissa than the idea of going in, going out. Yeah, or Vedana Nupathana or something. But I like to get as close to Paramatta Tissa as possible. It depends on how I'm meditating. Like when I was doing the Mahasini, of course, then you just thinking, you note it and then just go back to the yeah. So as soon as you note it, it tends to disappear anyway. So sit tuet yin, mat yin amya pyin pyaut ta de. Except for music sometimes. Music is more difficult. Jama jabaze, sit chana jabaze, kan kon jabaze. Dige me myo ma waso let me. Miga dawan. Right, da vela.